But the Cowboys have a week-high 32-point implied total on Sunday, facing a Falcons team that's coughing up a 6% passing touchdown rate to opposing quarterbacks and is dead last in football with only 11 sacks. Dak Prescott was returning from a one-week absence and was clearly not himself, but that hasn't affected his projection for Week 10, nor should it. While Cooper only has a 21% target share this season, he's still on a top 5 offense with a quarterback whose 18 passing touchdowns are 5th in football despite only playing 7 games. It's been a tough season week to week for Cooper, but benching him on a week where Dallas could explode seems ill-advised. If you love fantasy football and you haven't played daily fantasy football yet, well, I got an amazing offer for you. And my only hesitation in telling you this is that you're just going to stop watching my videos here on this channel. But that's cool. You can head over to our main channel, the DFS one, and, well, we'll be square. But check this out. If you sign up for Yahoo Fantasy as a new user, got to be a new user, using the link below in the description, and deposit just $10 or more if you'd like, but only has to be $10. You will get 1 full free month of Awesemo Plus Platinum. That's everything on the site. And it's not just football, baseball, basketball, hockey, PGA, MMA, NASCAR, even esports. If they have contests out there, we've got content for it. And all of the tools you need to win at Yahoo as well. Ownership projections, player projections, top stack tool, boom bust tool, the lineup builder, and so much more, all of which are built by the #1 ranked DFS player out there, Awesemo himself, won millions of dollars using these very tools I'm talking about right now. So check it out. Go to Yahoo, sign up using the link in the description, deposit $10 or more. They will send their information over to us, and we will email you with the steps to get your free month of Awesemo Plus Platinum and $90 value. You got to check DFS out. You're going to love it. And, well, you can use all of the tools on the site and, of course, follow along every single day of the week with our DFS content on the Awesemo YouTube channel as well. Check it out. Link in the description below. We'll see you over there. Marvin Jones has been a casualty of his own offense this season, specifically his rookie quarterback. But if there was ever a week to fire him back up into your starting lineups, it would be this Sunday. Hear me out. The Colts are playing pretty solid football right now, but this defense has been absolutely gutted in the passing game. They've been so bad, as a matter of fact, that opposing quarterbacks have a massive and a league-high 7.4% passing touchdown rate against them, with 23 scores allowed through the air and a 69.3% completion rating with 8 yards per attempt allowed. Hell, Josh Johnson torched them for 317 yards and 3 touchdowns in a relief effort last week, and very few quarterbacks have struggled against this matchup. So even Trevor Lawrence, who sprained his ankle last week but is still expected to play on Sunday, could be successful in this spot. It hasn't been pretty, but Marvin Jones still leads the Jaguars with a 23% target share, 31% share of team air yards, and targets inside the red zone with 7 and at the goal line with 4. So whether Jacksonville is playing from behind or their defense keeps them competitive like they did against the Bills, Lawrence will have to turn to the aerial attack. And the Colts have actually been a massive pass funnel defense this year.
Saying this is, how old is this song, would you say? Chris would know.
Timeless.
Timeless is the correct answer.
I'm gonna guess 15 years.
Yeah, I was gonna say it might be older than me.
Sounds like it was a finalist for the main menu music with Mario Golf.
Good Friday, everybody. Welcome in on the Awesemo Fantasy Football Show on the Awesemo Fantasy Football Channel. It's myself, Matt, Tara's in the house, and Chris, of course, is producing Yahoo, powering everything. We'll tell you about how you can take full advantage of a month of Awesemo Plus Platinum, even some free money as well. But as we all reconvene here on this Friday show, a lot to look at heading into the week. Pretty big surprising night, I would say, from Thursday Night Football. And then we also have the Odell Beckham Jr. scenario that's playing out west now with the LA Rams. So first and foremost, Tara, Matt, always a pleasure to hang. And hopefully we can begin technically this week, which is really the weekend for everybody else, strong from both season long and fantasy football. I won't bring up the season long league that myself and Matt are in, Tara, because I don't even know if anybody is even behind me anymore. I can't even see anybody behind me anymore.
That's amazing.
How is everybody? How are you feeling? How's everybody doing?
I'm trucking along. I'm ready for a Saturday. I'm ready for that.
Just in life?
Yes. I just need a Saturday. Because Saturday you get to sit down. I get to sit down, watch some college football, enjoy some time with the kids. So it's a nice relaxing day, a nice little day off.
Matt doesn't have days off, right?
No days off right now. No, I mean, I'll try to schedule
Wait
it
till
in
you
there.
have kids.
But no, I think this week is nuts because we have so many decisions coming down to the wire. Usually at this point, we have some sort of clarity. Friday afternoon, it's Friday 2 p.m. on the East Coast. We usually have some sort of idea what's going on. I can confidently say I have no idea what's going on.
Yeah, think about that. From where we are with quarterbacks right down. We kind of got that last night, really, to look at that with really Brissett and Tua coming down to the wire. Clearly, that played out a little differently. But yeah, I mean, I didn't mean to jump in, Sarah, but just to Matt's point about how this whole thing seems pretty much up in the air heading into this week.
Yeah, we've got a lot of, in terms of injuries, I know we're going to talk about that, but we've got a lot of we've got a lot of injuries up in the air as well that are going to literally come down to game time decisions.
Yep. And
yeah, that's really what I meant here. We just have so much on Friday afternoon. If players sit out on practice on Friday, usually it means something, but we have so many stars that are really needed by teams that the coaches and the teams themselves are holding out hope that they can make it through a pregame warm-up with another 36 hours of healing time. I kind of feel like there should just be sort of a stopping point. If you can't go through a walkthrough on Friday, maybe you shouldn't play NFL football on Sunday. But again, I don't make the rules. We just try to figure out what in the world is going to happen with fantasy football. Can't wait to dig into it.
Come on, it's all about gamesmanship. Seattle is preparing differently for Jordan Love than they are Aaron Rodgers, Matt. Come on. I kid. Of course.
That's the truth.
All right. Make sure you hit that thumbs up button if you're hanging with us. We don't ask much. And make sure you're subscribed as well here to the Awesemo Fantasy Football channel. We told you about these awesome links we have below for you, courtesy of Yahoo. $10 free, and then 1 free month of Awesemo Plus Platinum. All you have to do is sign up and jump into a paid contest. So let's look at last night. Clearly, it was not the result that a lot of people think who are rostering, starting Lamar Jackson, expecting Lamar to carry a team each and every week. That was not the case by any means. We also have the quarterback scenario on the other end of it. So let's start with Lamar and kind of looking at everybody around him, I think more so, because it's never going to be a scenario, no matter how bad he struggles, Matt, Tara, as far as, Lamar Jackson, it's Lamar Jackson. But around Lamar, and Matt, then Tara, if you guys want to start off, how did you look at last night and maybe over the course of the season to maybe stretch of games where Lamar has struggled at times, Lamar has been absolutely dynamic at times, and that impacts people around the quarterback spot?
Yeah,
go ahead, Tara.
No, it's okay. Go ahead.
Our names, Eitan. You said both our names.
I said Matt, then Tara. So
sorry,
that's my fault.
You're
right. You're right. I threw you
then.
both off. Yeah. Was it a conjunction, then, whatever it was? I apologize. I slipped that in there. I tried to be concise and maximize time, and instead it blew up in my face. But you should be used to stuff like that. It happens, I feel like, every show. Okay. Tara, then Matt. How about that?
Works for me. 43 attempts, 28 completions or 26 completions, kind of wild. With Lamar, it seems like he always gets there some way, somehow, rushing upside. But in terms of how it affected the receivers, Hollywood Brown's targets were there. A lot of those balls, were just slightly off in terms of him being able to have the best ball to catch. I feel like he should have had a few of them. But it was interesting to see Bateman really come alive on a few drives there, just really being able to be targeted as a reliable receiver when they were trying to make that push. Another one that surprised me was Devin Duvernay. I know a lot of people were kind of wondering, is Sammy Watkins going to come in here? He's going to take those targets away from Rashad Bateman. That didn't happen. Bateman was just fine, but Devin Duvernay was able to get in there and provide a little bit of a lift for the offense as well. So I thought that was a very interesting part of it.
So the game script obviously plays out in a way that Lamar Jackson, a dynamic rusher, we all know, has to pass the ball. We see the attempts go way up to 43, but we have started to see consistently high target shares for these three main options in Baltimore in the receiving game. And I do mean three because we're including Rashad Bateman in this conversation. When you come in as a rookie and all you do is get 6+ targets in your first 4 NFL games, you're a big part of the offense, tied with Mark Andrews with 8 targets. And then the other thing here, the production wasn't there. The production was not there. 6 receptions for 37 yards for Marquise Brown. But here's the big thing that I'm noticing. Listen to these target totals for Hollywood Brown over the last few games. 13 targets last night, 12 targets in week 9, 14 in week 7 before the bye. We are talking wide receiver 1 overall upside if you're going to get that many targets in this offense. I know the result of the game was poor and the result of the player's production was poor, but this is a player, if you're coming down to the trade deadline and someone else in your league has Marquise Brown, they may not know what they have. In terms of expected fantasy points, he's approaching the top wide receiver, like Devontae Adams level in that metric.
4 of 5 games, he's hit double-digit targets. You would think if I told you both ahead of time that you could bet over 60.5 receiving yards for Hollywood, and he would have 13 targets on the night, and I'm up in the air about betting that, both of you would look at me like I'm crazier than you normally look at me. So I pound that prop, and you're right, the productivity's not there. But I think, as funny as it is that the bet doesn't hit for me, the point you raise about that, and, looking back at it, Tara, as far as what Matt's talking about specifically with Brown, I don't know if there really is, even with Andrews, anybody else like this, but the targets and the lack of productivity last night may be enough for somebody to knee-jerk sell high as opposed to sell low, buy low, sell high, right? So in that case, take advantage of somebody's knee-jerk reaction to that, not necessarily getting the productivity out of the targets.
Yeah, I 100% agree. I mean, just kind of like a scan of Twitter this morning, I saw so many posts where people were saying that, oh, Rashad Bateman's the alpha, this, and that, because the yardage that you see there was the superior number was there for Rashad Bateman. But getting back to what Matt was saying with those targets, again, I think you're, setting it up perfectly that you can use that and saying, oh, look at here, Rashad Bateman coming along, all these, he's got targets, he's got yardage, and you can use that as a little leverage play to grab yourself Hollywood Brown, because for me, he's still that alpha in the offense.
All right, let's look at Miami on the other side. Oh, I'm sorry, Matt, go ahead.
No, I think that's exactly right. And remember, people often look at fantasy football very black and white. This player burned me, I'm sick of him, is something you hear often from league mates.
Take advantage of that. When you could pry somebody away in a league that maybe a team is looking like they've given up, or you just know whoever else is in that league that you can take advantage of that knee-jerk reaction. The flip side is Miami. Now, we saw Jacoby Brissett start. Tua comes in. Clearly, there was a difference in the second half. I know they had the defensive touchdown, but at least they get a touchdown with Tua. And what's interesting to me is, and we can, I guess, start with the quarterback spot. I don't even know how many people were relying on Jacoby Brissett last night from a season-long standpoint. I imagine it would have to be a parlay of really bad circumstances trickling down to where you're rostering him as your starter in a 1-quarterback league, even second quarterback league as well. But that's where it opens up the convo for Tua. And then also, I think we should look at 2 guys who are truly impacted by whoever the quarterback is. Gesicki is no longer a main threat with Tua out there, yet Jalen Waddle could be poor man's Brown if you look at the targets and at least consistency of volume that he'd get with Tua out there. All right, so let's start there. Matt, let's start with you first. Tara as well. Let's just look at Miami as a whole from both the quarterback spot to also the trickle-down effect.
All right, well, let's just call it how it is. None of these passers in this game were very good. If you look at some of these advanced metrics like QBR, which is on a scale of 0 to, you can get higher numbers than this, but if you're up in the 60s, 70s, 80s in QBR, you're doing very well for yourself. The QBRs for these players in this game, 35.9 for Tua, 32.9 for Lamar, and 14.4 for Jacoby Brissett. those are extremely low efficiency numbers, and it bears out in the way that these receiving games happen play out. And so, yes, you get a game script where you don't really need huge production from anyone, but you still get 4 for 87 from Albert Wilson, 4 for 84 from Isaiah Ford, and 4 for 61 from Jalen Waddle. In a winning game script, that's absolutely something you'll take. One thing I do have to point out, though, Mike Gesicki gives you a goose egg in the fantasy scoring column because you don't get points for targets, but he still led the team in targets with 7.
Interesting. Yeah.
Yeah, from my perspective, the pass catchers were very interesting. But again, you look at this running game, and unfortunately, I just don't see a scenario where we can trust Myles Gaskin. I mean, Baltimore is, I would say they're middle of the road. I think they're 12th in DVOA against the run. But the way that he was utilized, the lack of production on the ground, even watching the game, there were just, there was maybe 1, maybe 2 runs where you looked at it and saw like, hey, visually that looked like a good run. Other than that, we're talking about 14 carries, 31 yards, 1 of 2 receptions. I mean, he wasn't really involved from that perspective. It's not as if it got better when you went to Savant Ahmed as well. So, just overall, the offensive line, the team as a whole, they just seem like a complete mess, and it's hard to trust anyone within this offense.
Make sure you hit that thumbs up button, subscribe, and absolutely, as we move forward here to the rest of the week and look at some injuries, make sure you take advantage of what we're doing here with Yahoo as well. Those links below, right below the video, free $10, the 1 month free of Awesemo Plus Platinum as well. Now, I don't know if you caught this, but our fantasy football, technically it's our fantasy season-long fantasy football live before lock show each and every Sunday morning. Myself, RC, Nick, and Nick is the target here of this conversation. And he's a huge Dolphins honk. He loves Miami Dolphins, talks them up all the time. We try to get him to wear Dolphins gear, but he's got the green screen, so it kind of blends together. He was super, super down on his team, and I don't even know if he remembers making such a proclamation. But all I'm going to say is and look, I'm not looking forward to the visual of this, but at the same time, how can we not hold this individual accountable? Otherwise, I mean, he's an analyst. He's a paid analyst on a channel where he's giving analysis. And if we can't take him for his word that he's going to do the show shirtless because his Dolphins won, I don't know what we can take from Nick anymore.
Do they have to put some sort of like not safe for work banner on it the minute he does it? I don't know what we do about the ad revenue. Maybe it's worth it, because we got to hold people accountable, and you're right. So I love the tweets coming up on the screen. This is hilarious. And I'm really happy for him, to be honest. He's been super vocal about his fandom, and he wasn't really giving them a whole lot of a chance here. And again, like, there are weird things that happen in a single football game, in a single game slate, where honestly, when the second half started, the Ravens had, I believe, a win percentage above, or a win probability above 50%. It was anybody's game. And so you just basically go back to the original spread of the game. Tua Tagovailoa comes in for Jacoby Brissett, doesn't play very well, and yet we're talking about Miami winning handily here. To me, there's a little bit of randomness baked into there. I think Tara said it best. We're not really trusting anybody in the fantasy football realm in terms of the Miami Dolphins. But if you're worried about the Ravens, I don't think you need to be long-term. The ceiling certainly remains equally high going forward.
Have you ever made such a proclamation like that? Where you, not, of course, to Nick's level, my goodness, but anything like that where you write a check and you have to cash it? I remember there was a Phillies game years ago. There was no way they were going to lose to the Miami Marlins. And, of course, they not only lose a series to the Marlins, they get swept. I said I'd walk the Ben Franklin Bridge from where I am in Philly to the other side in Camden. And, of course, they get swept. And I have the camera for TV that I'm using and following across there. So I don't know if I were to give Nick an opportunity to do one or the other, but I don't know how familiar he is with Camden. I am, so I was able to maneuver around a little bit.
I have not. I do believe that you do need to hold people accountable. So I 100% support you in that. I tend to walk that middle line. So I'm not making any bets that I don't feel like I'm comfortable with adhering to.
That's a good point. Come on, Matt. You must have one somewhere buried.
I'm trying to rack the brain. I don't have anything on the mind right now. We can get to some other things, and if I have something good, I'll say something.
Absolutely. Let's look at Odell Beckham, Cam Newton, and then trying to figure out what's going on with Aaron Rodgers, Alvin, Kamara. Have a nice start or sit featuring Mark Ingram, especially on the backdrop of what's going on with Kamara that we'll get to in a second. But let's just look at Odell Beckham Jr. First and foremost, Tara, we'll start with you. He arrives in LA. Now we have the rostering of Odell Beckham, and I saw from Chris here that it's through the roof as expected on Yahoo. And then also who's impacted here on the squad, because I know people like Chris, who has Robert Woods, myself, who has Cooper Kupp, anybody who's relying on Van for a couple of big plays, all nervous. Tyler Higbee, all nervous right now that OBJ is going to come in and vulture some catches.
The only person that I am not concerned about is Cooper Kupp. I am concerned about everyone else. And it's not that I think that Odell is going to come in here and all of a sudden flip and be Giants version of Odell and just, out there dominating. But my problem is that he's going to come in here and he's just going to creep away a few targets from the people where targets matter. So Van Jefferson, unfortunately, he's that big play guy. We're thinking Deshaun Jackson leaves. He's going to have that opportunity now. And I think some of that is going to go towards Odell. I think that Sean McVay is going to want to try, and it sounds like he wants to try and make this a potentially long-term thing. So it's not like Odell is going to come in there, not get targets, not get attention. And then on top of that, I think that it could affect Robert Woods. The problem with Robert Woods that we've seen is just the level of consistency that he's, been struggling to have with Cooper Kupp getting all of the attention. So Robert Woods, I think we're going to feel a little bit less comfortable with the level of consistency that we're going to get from him in terms of his production.
All right. I think you're exactly right about everything you just said. But at the same time, I think it's also possible that the Rams push up the amount of team fantasy points, just the amount of overall scoring with Odell Beckham, to the point where you want to roster players from this team in every single game. Their Vegas totals are going to shoot through the roof. They were already super high. And if you look at team cumulative fantasy points, that is something I use to track the production of an entire team over the course of a season. Over the last 6 weeks, the Rams, of course, have been right there with the best teams in the NFL. Number 7 in PPR fantasy points, and in expected fantasy points, which is more of a volume metric, they're 4th. There's a lot to go around. What if they move up to the Tampa Bay Buccaneers level, which is another 30 or so fantasy points per game that the Buccaneers are throwing around? A lot of that is touchdowns, but again, we want to be a part of the best offenses in football. So I actually think that you still want to hold on to Robert Woods. There was already volatility problems. There was already consistency issues with these players anyway. Van Jefferson, Tyler Higbee, that's another story. They're down on the totem pole enough where they're probably going to be affected by this. But I think the offense as a whole might just get better.
So let me throw it back real quick at you, Matt, and then Tara, if you have thoughts as well. Somebody, and I don't mean completely relegated or just completely taken out of the game plan by any means. Let's assume what you're saying, and it makes sense. So I have no problem jumping to this assumption. It works. Let's assume what you're saying works, and they increase the amount of productivity we're getting from a team fantasy point production. Am I wrong in assuming that the majority of that is coming in the passing game, and maybe the running game gets impacted by this more negatively than we're looking at Van Jefferson or Tyler Higbee, Matt?
Yeah, certainly possible. And you know what? I felt like that was already starting to creep into their game plans, where Darrell Henderson was getting nicked up. They had concerns about him being a full-time bell cow anyway, hence the drafting of Cam Akers. Remember that. Also, I should mention about Cam Akers, he's on Instagram sort of testing the waters. What if I come back this year? I will say there is a league that has an IR slot where I have Cam Akers sitting there. It's probably going to be the NFL playoffs, so don't get super hyped about the fantasy football playoffs. Not saying it's impossible, but I do like that hypothesis where the overall production goes up but they just put it in Matt Stafford's hands, let him find the open guy. When you got Cooper Kupp, Robert Woods, and OBJ streaking down the field, one of them's open.
Yeah, it is an interesting point. Over the past 2 weeks, his attempts have dipped down. He had 11 this past week, 14 the week before, 15 the week before, and we have seen a decrease in snap count as well, down into the 60s. So, a lot of that could be injury related, but I do think as you kind of look forward at their schedule moving forward, I think you can feel a little bit more comfortable with the fact that they're not going to hit a ton of defenses that are going to be exactly very difficult against the run. So if anything, I think maybe there might be a little downtick in terms of attempts, but it might open things up a little bit more. If there are all these receivers that they have on the field at once, they're all threats, they're all deep vertical threats, and they're, out there opening up the field, maybe that can open things a little bit more up at the line for Henderson to be able to get a little bit more room.
So let's look at Cam Newton. We'll also touch on some injuries or just guys returning like Aaron Rodgers. Newton's back. Looking at this now, 14% rostered. So instead of just asking straight up, hey, you're going to get to Newton, I guess it's maybe easier to look at how or where you would have to be in order to be streaming Newton as a quarterback. Like what scenario type would be playing out. I imagine that for a guy who hasn't played this year, there's probably going to be some wait and see. To be fair, he's not going to play this weekend either. So, Tara, we'll flip it back to you. And then, Matt, just kind of looking at Newton first and foremost. Look, we also have a team that is so, and understandably, top-heavy dependent on Christian McCaffrey, that if he's not out there, it's starting to become obvious that you're going to need a top 3 or 4 quarterback to overcome that. Nobody in PJ, Cam, or Darnold is that. So just looking at Newton first and foremost, Tara, and then kind of the big picture around the team, are you rushing to get to him if you are desperate to stream a quarterback?
I am not. I am not in 1 quarterback leagues. In 2 quarterback leagues, I am. I do think that he's worthy of a roster spot because as we creep closer towards that, week 14 area, we're going to get into a point where, again, these bye weeks are going to be affecting people. When we've got a lot of tough bye weeks where there's quarterbacks like Matt Stafford, Carson Wentz, you might be relying on that are going to be on bye weeks as we're moving towards the playoffs. So Cam is someone who can give you that rushing upside. And if we're holding him in a 2 quarterback league as we get closer towards the end, I think he'll have his legs under him at that point. So yeah, I can grab him right now in 2 quarterback and hold on to him. But in 1 quarterback, I'm not looking to stream him anytime soon.
I think that's fair. One thing I will say about Cam Newton, even in a 1 quarterback league, is that when we get close to the playoffs, we have a reliance on our starting lineup already. We know who our studs are already. And so, one, if there is an injury, it can feel sometimes catastrophic, certainly at the quarterback position that scores the most points typically in your entire lineup. And second, I want to stash players on my bench who have the capability of being the number 1 overall player at their position. And I'm not saying it's happening this week, he's not starting. And I'm not saying it's going to happen for sure here, but we literally saw him as the QB1 overall in his last game played. Against the Jets, I'll give you that. Week 17, right. Nobody in that building had anything to play for, but the man still scored 38.5 fantasy points. New team, new year, new situation, but at least we know what's capable from Cam Newton, which we can't say about a lot of the bottom of the bench stashes we have right now. Yeah. I like players who are capable of scoring 30 fantasy points on the bottom of my bench if things break right, and Cam Newton is simply one of those players now.
Is that a foreshadowing of Newton making next week's show of the 30-plus performer for Savoca here? Is that what I'm getting, Matt?
Hey, if they run power at the goal line like the Patriots were doing before Cam Newton was placed on the COVID list earlier in the year, yeah, I'll be doing it. Absolutely. He had over 30 fantasy points multiple times last year.
That's amazing. And it wouldn't even be considered chalk. I think to your point, and Tara, just looking at what Matt lays out, it's fascinating in the sense of this is, and he's not the only individual in the NFL up for a job next year, clearly, but you can take advantage of that. And it's not just a narrative. This is a proven thing where if somebody's OBJ is another one where if he's getting opportunity, it's about making more money, getting that next contract. Cam's trying to come back to the league. So even if the team is cooked and Carolina is out of it and guys are just going through motions, we know for a fact, to Matt's point, Cam's not doing that. He wants to get back clearly into the league, and he needs some sort of secure long-term deal, however long that may be. And that comes with playing well, or at least aggressive this year.
Yeah, and it's interesting. I mean, in terms of dynasty leagues as well, you mentioned the long-term thing. It's very possible that we don't see Sam Darnold for the remainder of the year. I mean, that contract that Cam signed, it wasn't some chump change, thank you, come in and be my backup kind of situation. I do think they brought him in with the intention of him possibly finishing out the remainder of the regular season here. So he does have an opportunity to come in and maybe showcase that he can be a guy that they can sign into next year. Maybe they go in and draft a young quarterback, have him sit behind Cam for a little bit. So yeah, I think there are long-term implications here with Cam.
All right, let's keep it moving here. We've a bunch of quarterback situations to deal with, and we'll blast through them, take some start-sit questions. Week 10, 30-plus performers, sneaky starts. I know it's an ambitious 30 minutes, but we're going to get through it here. Let's start with Aaron Rodgers, Russell Wilson. We'll get to Kyler Murray as this news comes in here, and thanks to Chris for popping that up about Murray being a game-time decision. So, Matt, let's start with you. Tara, we can burn through this one game specifically because it has so much to do with us monitoring the quarterbacks. Russell Wilson looks to be a go. Aaron Rodgers, the line is reflecting that as it's getting closer and closer to a pick 'em. Aaron Rodgers still up in the air until Saturday. So what are you doing approaching this game?
Kind of weird, right? I mean, earlier in the week, it felt like the line of this game was kind of hedging, because I think if Aaron Rodgers and the Packers are healthy and Russell Wilson and the Seahawks are healthy, what is this game doing as like a 48.5 point total? That doesn't make sense to me. This is a much higher scoring game in the making here. Well, of course, we saw it, Miami versus Baltimore last night. One game samples can be weird, but I'm projecting and predicting a shootout. I think Tyler Lockett and DK Metcalf have huge ceilings. Once again, it's game on for everyone involved. It's been a couple weeks since the Packers have been full strength. I just don't understand. Yeah, the line has been super weird for this game all week. It's almost like just trying to take advantage of the people who don't believe that these players are going to come off the COVID list or off the injured reserve. In Russell Wilson's case, I do believe it. I don't have any reason to see why he wouldn't be back at this point. And if it is, this game's going well over its current total.
Yeah, for me, I miss Russell Wilson. I roster him in several leagues, so I will be rolling him out for sure this week. I think you should feel comfortable starting him. This is their franchise quarterback. They're not going to roll him out if his hand is not ready. So I think he's good to go. Aaron Rodgers, the good thing about this is that it's not a physical injury. So with the rules in terms of the testing, we'll know. It's not going to be a game time decision. We will know in advance. Tomorrow's probably the day at some point. I guess, I don't know the exact timing, but sometime tomorrow we will know if he was able to test negative or not. So you'll be able to make your pivot in advance. So from that perspective, I'm not too worried. You'll just have to go ahead and get your ducks in a row, but it doesn't have to be a last minute decision. So that's the positive.
Yeah, and I don't think that there is even gray area for Green Bay, right? Like if you're rostering somebody that's not named Aaron Jones and Devontae Adams on Green Bay, you're kind of just further SOL anyway with Jordan Love. I mean, Aaron Rodgers makes everybody viable, but you're not going to sit Aaron Jones or Devontae Adams because Jordan Love's starting. So that's definitely something, as Tara mentioned, to keep an eye on, because Saturday we'll know this is not technically a game time decision. I saw earlier Devontae Smith or Alvin Kamara in the flex, and that plays, not Alvin Kamara, Mark Ingram or Devontae Smith in the flex, playing off of what's going on with Alvin Kamara. So, Matt, let's start. Tara, if you want to take a chunk as well off of this. And it's really just about the question, first and foremost, if you would start Smith or Ingram as a result, and also just with Alvin Kamara in the backdrop. Matt, you mentioned this at the beginning of the show. When you don't practice on Friday, both eyebrows get raised. It's one thing if it's a Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, depending on when your game is played in midweek. Friday, though, is a different story. So Kamara maybe doesn't play. Ingram versus Smith, and then what happens with Kamara and really the team around him if he doesn't go?
Yeah, this is pretty cut and dry for me. Obviously, I don't really want a part of an offense led by Trevor Siemian, Marquez Callaway, and Mark Ingram in the year 2021. That doesn't make an NFL offense to me. Obviously, when you add Kamara to that mix, suddenly it feels much better. And with all that said, just projecting out fantasy points, it's not even close. If Kamara sits, you play Ingram in that situation. The ceiling is probably a little higher for Smith, but especially in any kind of PPR league, the touches are absolutely going to be there for Ingram. It's like a 4-point difference for me in PPR leagues right now.
Yeah, I
That's
thought
assuming Kamara's out. Sorry.
Right. Oh no, that's good to clarify. Absolutely. I think that's what we're building on for sure.
I thought I was going to have to disagree there for a second, but I 100% agree. I would be going with Mark Ingram. If you want to do one thing against Tennessee, you want to run the ball against them, and it's not that hard to do. So I do think that they won't deviate. I don't think that they'll say, okay, let's all of a sudden turn this over to Trevor Siemian and Traquan Smith and Marquez Callaway. I don't think that's going to be the reality. I think Mark Ingram in this offense is a different Mark Ingram than in Houston, just by the nature of the environment that he's around, the coaching, the organization, the players. So I'm comfortable with going Mark Ingram if Alvin Kamara is out.
I love how Matt had to clarify and specifically mention the year. Like it could work, maybe a decade and a half ago, 15 years ago.
Trying to give some respect to a Heisman winner in Mark Ingram, but 2010, 2011, that's a long time ago.
What, Devontae Smith chopped liver? He didn't win one? Am I missing something here?
That's true.
I was talking about true. That's a good point. I like it. Let's get a team of all Heisman winners. Add Lamar Jackson in there. That's a good goal for next year.
Bring Tim Tebow back. Can we do that?
Well,
absolutely. We almost got it.
Almost.
Almost, right.
So close.
Right. So let's move on. A couple of others that we'll get to. I think Arizona is fascinating here because Kyler Murray now is a game time decision. DeAndre Hopkins did not practice. AJ Green did, but we're still a little uncertain about everything. So let's start from the top here, Tara, and look at Kyler Murray first and foremost, how that impacts everybody else. And really, if somebody is rostering DeAndre Hopkins, how serious is it that they need to find a pivot?
I think you need to find a pivot. I'm not feeling very good about it. Unfortunately, I do think Kyler Murray is going to play. I'm not feeling good about DeAndre Hopkins. So from that perspective, you need to find a pivot. If you can and want to pivot to what player, I think that, AJ Green is practicing, but I feel comfortable pivoting to Christian Kirk. He's been a little bit more consistent in the targets. He does have touchdown upside. So of the people that are left within this offense, from a wide receiver perspective, that's the one that I would feel the most comfortable with. My comfort level with Kyler Murray is a little bit shaky. I think that, unfortunately, with him being a game time decision tells me that they're not super confident he's not completely healed. And I think that limits what he can do on the ground. And it's that, that ability to run around, maybe even not necessarily his ability to run around and get yards, but just to get outside of the pocket and make plays. And I think he gets limited there.
Yeah, I got to agree. You probably don't have a better option than Kyler Murray if he's starting, but it's hard to imagine him with his typical mobility with this kind of injury. And you almost wonder if that is influencing their decision to sort of slow him down. Because earlier in the week, it seemed that Kyler himself was super optimistic about playing, and it hasn't really progressed in that way. I'm with Tara here. I think you need to make alternative plans for DeAndre Hopkins. Even if he does play, I think he's going to be extremely limited to the point where you may consider benching him even if he's active. I know that takes some chutzpah, but one player I do want to mention, especially if Kyler Murray is out, I think Zach Ertz might actually be flex worthy in that situation with a backup quarterback. Backup quarterbacks tend to need to check down more often. Obviously, James Conner is going to be popular, but Zach Ertz has seen 5 or more targets in every single game. One game with 4 targets, but he caught all 4. He's been hyper productive as a member of the Cardinals, or I should say hyper efficient. And, when you need floor, sometimes 6 or 7 points is all you need. Zach Ertz will get you there this week.
That's a sneaky play right there. And I love it, especially if we're talking about no DeAndre Hopkins by any means. I did see a couple of start sits here. I know we're going to keep it moving with some injury talk and get to our 30-plus performers and sneaky starts for sure before we get out of here. But let's flip it right back to you, Matt, Tara, as well. Carr or Hurts, as far as Patrick asking that straight up quarterback question?
Carr or Hurts? It's pretty much Hurts every time. Rushing floor and ceiling, I'll take it. It's been icky. They've thrown under 17 or less times in the last 2 weeks. But when you add 60 yards a game on the ground and you have that touchdown upside there, I will plug my nose and play Hurts because it's fantasy football.
I'm going the opposite direction. I am going with Carr. Vegas versus Kansas City. That's enough of an explanation for me.
You know, it's not bad right there. Denver's defense is unforgiving by all means. Another one here, Shia on the chat. Freiermuth or Font? You want to take a shot at that, Tara?
Oh, yeah. I'm a little biased on this. I love me some Pat Freiermuth, my most rostered tight end in general. So, yeah, that's it for me.
Gosh, I have them right next to each other in the rankings.
Tight one
man.
here.
I think just because Pat Freiermuth is playing Detroit and Detroit's defense on a per pass and a per play basis has been the worst in the league, Kansas City's giving them a run for their money. Pat Freiermuth by a nose.
Oh, I love it. A nose. Okay, so let's look at a couple of more scenarios here before we get to our 30-plus performers. And I'm just trying to take advantage of either one major impact player or, as we had with Arizona, a couple of guys banged up. So let's start with Cleveland. I was in this situation last night where I have Chubb, but I don't know what's going to happen with Chubb. So I also had Myles Gaskin, and it was kind of like one of these decisions of, do I hold out or do I just roster and start Myles Gaskin? I know that there are a lot of people out there that are waiting to see what happens with Nick Chubb. You also have D'Ernest in there as well. So let's look at this, Matt, as far as the Cleveland backfield scenario and how you're playing that. Chubb's in, he's in. That's the no-brainer. It's more so what happens if he's out.
Yeah, Chubb is officially out, I believe. So
it's
really
he is.
Simple. D'Ernest Johnson.
I thought he had until Saturday. I'm sorry.
It just came through.
Oh, see? Okay, good. I don't feel as much of an idiot now. I thought this was something that was Matt was going to be like, dude, this has been out for 2 days. What the hell's wrong with you?
No, just happened, but it also makes our analysis a lot easier. We're playing D'Ernest Johnson if we have him.
Yes, 100%.
Fair enough. All right, let's look at the Steelers. Claypool, Harris, Big Ben, all on the report coming into this weekend now. And I don't know, Chase Claypool specifically not practicing. So, Terry, you want to start here with the Steelers offense and kind of looking around at how this whole thing plays out?
Yeah, again, I mean, we just mentioned Pat Freiermuth, and he's actually someone that I was going to talk about later in the show as well. But I think he gets a big uptick here from Chase Claypool, more than likely being out. I don't think it's official yet, but yeah, I think that he's really got that touchdown upside. They have such a great connection. If Ben does play, such a great connection within the red zone as well. So I think he's the one that can benefit from this as well. You also have James Washington, who did have a big play. I think he's got that big play capability to be able to, if you need somebody to get you through in a pinch, he might be that guy as well. But I haven't heard a ton on Najee Harris. I don't think that I would personally be pivoting to any of those backup running backs because it's not the same talent level per se.
Yeah, I think we're burying the lead. Deontay Johnson could get 18 targets a game in this offense with Chase Claypool out. It didn't happen last week against Chicago. He had 6, but the week before, 13 targets. The week before that, 13 targets. 2 weeks before that, 13 targets. The week before that, 12 targets. The man is going to gobble up opportunity here. There obviously is some volatility because it's a wide receiver, but I don't see how Big Ben moves away from Deontay Johnson. He's popping in all of our DFS tools this week. He looks like an excellent play this week, and really anytime Claypool is out.
You know what? That's a nice transition because we're going to get to the Gronk news coming up in our sneaky starts before we get out of here. And a reminder, if you haven't already, hit that thumbs up button, subscribe to the fantasy football channel that we have as we continue to build this on Awesemo. and use those links below. They're for you. The $10 free just to mess around and play with on Yahoo right away. And 1 free month of Awesemo Plus Platinum if you're brand new here, as you see Chris putting it up. Brand new to Yahoo, get 1 free month of Awesemo Plus Platinum, and the two work together. It's a beautiful combination. But I felt it's a nice little transition because you mentioned Deontay Johnson, and I see that Deontay Johnson is making a second appearance on the show here, Matt, specifically as we shift to 30-plus performers.
Yeah, let me wax poetic about Johnson a little bit more. Heck of a transition here. But I think these players, especially on bad offenses, are constantly underrated by the fantasy community. And Johnson started to get a little bit more respect this year. But the name of the game in fantasy football is volume, and that's what he gets in spades, as I just mentioned. 5th in the league in target share, 15th in the league in air yard share, and then he's getting plenty of deep targets. His targets per route run is 13th. It just feels like he's around 30th in perception is what I'm trying to point at. And he's already had a 24 fantasy point game this season. So getting to 30 does not sound unreasonable to me. I think with Claypool out going forward, we're going to see a monster game, especially against the Lions and their last ranked defense. 30-point performer, Deontay Johnson.
Wow. All right, Tara. I don't know if you have any thoughts on that or you just want to hit yours.
I like it. No, I do. I think, a lot of people, kind of forget about Deontay because they kind of write him off and thinking, that for some reason Big Ben's arm doesn't seem to target Deontay or doesn't seem to hit Deontay, but they actually mesh up perfectly. So all Big Ben's inefficiencies don't really affect him that much. But my 30-plus point player, I'm going with Austin Eckler. I am attacking Minnesota's defense because if you want to attack them, you probably shouldn't through the air. They are 3rd in DVOA against the pass and 26th in DVOA against the run. So I think it is a game where they can really rely on Eckler. He's been very consistent. He's had a phenomenal year. And I think maybe it gets buried a little bit in terms of the struggles that Justin Herbert has had and kind of the games where just the offense as a whole has disappeared. But overall, Eckler has been having just a fantastic and incredibly consistent game. And when you look at this, it's actually probably a good bounce back week for him because last week he only had 3 targets, which is extremely weird for him. So I would expect him to get very much so involved on the ground and both through the air and reach back to those classic 10 Eckler targets that we're used to seeing. So I think this is a game where he is set up so well to get a 30-plus point performance.
I like that.
I love it. There are only 3 running backs, I think, who have the target upside that Eckler does. Kamara when he's healthy, DeAndre Swift, and Eckler.
100%.
I think the game script was just a little funky last week as well because the Eagles defense is and I'm going to get to them in a second here. They're just awkward. And I say that in a negative sense, right? Like clunky. Something that you try to pick up or lift and it's light, but it's just awkward. Like the dimensions are awkward. So it adds to how frustrating it is. That's the Eagles defense.
Wait. I got to call you out on this, Eitan. I'm so sorry. This is my pet peeve in life.
Go ahead, please. What did I do wrong?
Every single time I lift furniture with a gentleman of the middle-aged variety, that is the first thing I hear. It's not heavy. It's just awkward. Will you help me with it? That is the first thing I hear. I'm sorry. I digress. We can talk about football again.
What makes you think laziness just set on when I hit my mid-30s or early 40s? I was using that excuse back in my 20s, Matt. Come on.
I totally use that excuse for some things too.
Seriously, right? And you even have to put your elbows out a little bit to make it seem how awkward it is. Matt,
I don't know if I just unlocked some sort of secret code that I wasn't privy to, but
yeah, the Konami code. I love it. All right, let me go back to what I'm saying here to start this whole thing was the Eagles defense. Look, we take a risk and win this segment. Scared money don't make money, all right? So I'm going with Jerry Jeudy. Darius Slay is out. Teddy Bridgewater is already deadly accurate when throwing the football. Guess what? The Eagles have allowed 5 quarterbacks this year to complete 80% or more of their passes. What do you think Bridgewater's going to do given the opportunity? And oh, by the way, as much as they have put some pressure on quarterbacks, they really don't get there as much. So they blitz, but it doesn't pay off. Jeudy starting to trend as he came back. He had a nice game, 8 targets, 4 before that against Washington, but 7 his first game back, as we saw. I like, or first game of the year, sorry. I like what I've seen following that last game against Dallas. The target share is there. This is all about the matchup. Somebody on Denver, I'm going to come back to this. Somebody on Denver's going off. So I'm just going to corner it down and say it's Judy.
I like it. I completely agree.
It's a risk, Matt. I understand.
Yeah, it is. He's got that ability in him for sure.
I figured out it was either him or Sutton. All right, let's look at some sneaky starts. All right, Matt, we'll go with you, Tara, as well. I'll jam one in there before we get out of here, by all means. But let's start, Matt, with you. Some sneaky starts, maybe some guys that aren't on people's radar, or maybe they haven't looked deep enough as far as needing to stream a spot, a guy who would be available on the waivers as well.
Yeah, then I think if you're looking for a player on waivers, look at Tyler Johnson from the Tampa Bay Buccaneers. The Chris Godwin decision this week is going down to the wire. It's going to be a game time decision, but Gronkowski's already out. Antonio Brown's already out. And Mike Evans can't catch everything on the outside here for Tampa Bay against Washington. They're 10-point favorites. We haven't seen the line move all that much, which really speaks to me about the confidence Vegas has in Tom Brady to, quote unquote, figure it out. And I think Tyler Johnson is part of that solution, most likely on waiver wires. And I bet you could pick him up on Friday or Saturday. And if they announce that Godwin's in, just drop him. You don't have to keep him for the whole weekend. I just think that you're going to have plenty of points in that game. And I wouldn't be surprised if he ended up with a touchdown in this. Another one I did want to mention really fast, Dalton Schultz. If he's on your bench, he's in such a great spot. You got to start him.
Awesome. All right. Tara, any thoughts, or you want to go to yours? We have time for both.
Yeah, I'll jump to mine. So Jamal Agnew is Jamal Agnew versus Indianapolis, and that's the key there. The Jags offense right now from a receiving perspective is really going through Jamal Agnew and Dan Arnold. It seems crazy. We may not want it to be that way, but I think we have to accept that's where Urban Meyer is taking this vehicle. The target share for him has just been so incredibly consistent since DJ Chark went down. Week 6, he was 6 of 7. Week 7, he was 5 of 6. Week 8, 6 of 12. Last week was not particularly good. He was only 3 of 5 for 27 yards, but quite frankly, he was actually the leader of the receiving core outside of Dan Arnold. So again, he's just showcasing as this guy who was somehow transformed into the leader of the wide receiving core for the Jags. And against Indianapolis, who is not particularly good against the pass, that's where you want to attack them. And I think that Jamal Agnew can be a really big part of this game for them this week. My second person, I talked about him earlier, it's Pat Freiermuth. I mean, at this point, we need to understand that he is the tight end one of that offense, regardless of whether or not Eric Ebron is coming back in or not. Last week, he caught 5 of 6 targets for 43 yards and 2 touchdowns. And at this point, he is also someone that can be a really big beneficiary. Obviously, Deontay Johnson's going to get his, but when you're looking at where some of those targets are going to be shifting from Claypool, they could very easily shift over to Pat Freiermuth. So in my opinion, if you've got him, I think he might be a little bit available, but I think he's, people are coming around and they're snatching him up. But he's someone that if he's out there, you need to grab him right now because he's good rest of season. He's someone that you can get in there this week and start rest of season as well.
Awesome. I'll just leave you with this thought. Again, going back to Denver, if you find somebody, a starter who's out there, Patrick as well, if you can roster him and you're in need of a wide receiver, maybe in deeper leagues, Eagles defense just doesn't get to the quarterback. Quarterbacks can do whatever they want. And the Denver offense isn't as bad as I think people that they're used to the old Denver offense, where they didn't have any skill set guys to move the ball down the field or a quarterback who couldn't complete a pass 5 yards down the field. That's no longer the case. Noah Fant's back, then I would definitely race to get him. If you can't, then, I understand he would probably be heavily rostered. But if not, he's a really sneaky play against that soft Eagles D. I'm just trying to take advantage of my team being dog shit and give people some sort of advice out there. That's all. Nobody knows your team like you. And my team is awful.
Oh, man. That Philly bias bleeding through into your analysis. How dare you?
I love it.
Hey, fair enough. All right. We have Philadelphians on this channel, like Lofty. I can't say anything because all you would do is pull up some clip from Lofty where he's talking about one of his teams and he has to preface it like, no, I really am a Philadelphia fan, but insert this team sucks are god awful statements. So yes, all good. All right, we appreciate everybody hanging with us again. On your way out, hit that thumbs up button. Make sure you're subscribed here to the Awesemo Fantasy Football channel at It's Terra Time at Draftaholic. For Tara, for Matt, at Shander Show, for me. Thanks to Chris for producing as well. And look, those links are there for you. $10 free, just $10. That's it, free to use on Yahoo. And we're going to give you 1 free month of Awesemo Plus Platinum. We'll see you both next week. Hope you all have a great weekend. And thanks again for riding with us. Tara, Matt, enjoy it. And hopefully we all come back next week and talk about the great performances and dollars that we all cashed. So we'll see you then. Have a great weekend.